The bitter November wind whipped down off the jagged ridges above Bitter Creek, driving a needle-sharp sleet that froze the mud of the county road into jagged iron. Nora Sterling stood on the high wooden steps of the town hotel with a single carpet bag in her left hand, her 4-year-old daughter, Lily, clutching tight to her skirts with shivering fingers. For 3 long years since her husband died in a timber collapse, Nora had worked as a seamstress and washerwoman in the hotel basement, earning barely enough to keep a roof over their heads. But when the hotel owner sold out to a speculator from Denver, the new manager took one look at Nora and her fatherless child, handed her $3 silver, and told her that a respectable establishment had no room for a destitute widow and a child who didn't carry a living man's name. The town swirled with harsh cruelty that afternoon, as Nora stood on the boardwalk, trying to wrap her thin woolen shawl around little Lily's shoulders. 2 local shopkeepers paused on their way to the tavern. "Whose child is that?" One of them laughed, pointing a sneering finger at the ragged little girl whose toes peeked through worn boots. "Looks like another castaway nobody wants to feed." The laughter carried across the frozen square, sharp and cold as a razor. Nora did not weep, nor did she lower her chin. She picked up her carpet bag, pulled Lily close, and began walking out past the timberline into the gathering twilight, facing a high country blizzard with nowhere to go and no one to call for help. She made it 2 miles up the mountain road before the sleet turned into a blinding whiteout. Little Lily's steps grew heavy and slow, her lips turning blue as the temperature plummeted toward 0. Huddled beneath the sheltering branches of a fallen pine, Nora held her daughter against her chest, doing the dark, desperate arithmetic every frontier mother fears, calculating how many hours 2 freezing bodies can last, and knowing in her heart that the child would slip away first. The heavy thud of iron-shod hooves through snow broke the howling quiet. A heavy ranch wagon, loaded with fence posts and grain, rumbled out of the white gloom, pulled by 2 massive draft horses. The driver was Caleb Vance, a 36-year-old cattle rancher whose place sat up in the high basin. Caleb was a broad-shouldered, quiet man, with a face carved by sun and wind, known across the county as a man who spoke little and worked hard. He had buried his wife 4 winters back, and since then, his sturdy log house had stood silent and gray, a place where a lonely man lived, only to work. Caleb pulled the heavy team to a dead stop, set the iron brake, and stepped down into the deep drifts. He didn't ask for town gossip, nor did he offer soft words that would sting a proud woman's heart. He looked at Nora's thin shawl, the shivering child tucked inside her coat, and the single carpet bag sitting in the snow. Then he looked straight into Nora's eyes and asked the only question that mattered. "Can you cook a hot meal and keep a hearth lit, Mrs. Sterling?" Nora looked up at the weathered rancher, her voice raspy but steady, despite her trembling jaw. "I've cooked for 20 hotel guests 3 times a day, Mr. Vance," she said flatly. "I can mend clothes until they're stronger than the day they were woven, card wool, and keep a house tight against a gale. I ask no charity, and I give no trouble." Caleb nodded once, a slow, solid gesture. "I've a double-built log house up the basin," he said, his voice level as a carpenter's rule. "My late wife's side of the house has been shut up since she passed, but the stove is good, and the roof doesn't leak. There's a room with a heavy oak door that locks from the inside, a feather tick, and a dry wood stack. You keep the house, cook when you're able, and I'll pay a fair weekly wage. Your girl will have fresh milk and a warm fire every night of her life. You'll owe me nothing but honest work, Mrs. Sterling, and no man crosses your threshold without your leave. Will you come?" Nora looked at his plain, unvarnished face and saw no deceit in it, only the quiet decency of a man who couldn't leave a freezing child to the coyotes. She took his calloused hand, let him haul her and Lily up to the high bench seat, and rode up into the dark timber. When they reached the Basin Ranch, Caleb did not usher them into his own quarters. He opened the heavy timber door to the east wing, lit a kerosene lamp, and kindled a fire in the iron stove until the cedar logs crackled with heat. He set a pitcher of fresh cow's milk on the table, handed her a brass key, and stepped back onto the porch. "The bolt works from the inside," Caleb said simply. "Sleep long, Mrs. Sterling. The morning comes when it comes." That night, for the first time in 3 years, Nora lay in a warm, dry bed with her daughter, sleeping soundly beside her, wrapped in thick wool blankets, while the stove glowed red in the corner. In town, she had been humiliated, discarded, and mocked. Here, behind an oak door that was hers to lock, there were no prying eyes, no cruel whispers, and no demands. Caleb rose before dawn, fed his stock, and worked his range, leaving fresh firewood and salt pork on her porch, without expecting a word of dramatic gratitude in return. As 4 feet of snow locked the basin in December, Nora set about earning her keep with a quiet, fierce devotion. She scrubbed the timber house down to the grain, filled the pantry with baked bread and hot stews, and nursed little Lily into a bright, rosy-cheeked child who ran through the house like a sunbeam. But Caleb's home had grown cold and gray around a man who merely used it as a shelter between work shifts. In the parlor of the East Wing sat an old, dust-covered quilting frame and crates of raw sheep's wool that had sat untouched for 4 years. Quilting was Nora's true hidden craft, a gift taught to her by her mother that she had practiced in secret whenever she could find scraps of cloth. She found chests of old wool coats, flannel shirts, and leftover calico in the attic. Over the long, snowbound winter nights, she carded the wool, dyed the fabrics using walnut hulls and pine bark, and set up her frame by the fire. Under her hands, those discarded scraps were pieced together into a breathtaking quilt featuring an intricate Star of the Prairie pattern in rich navy, warm rust, and cream. She laid the finished quilt across the foot of Caleb's bed while he was out on the range. When Caleb came in frozen from the blizzard that evening and saw the warmth, beauty, and honor brought into his quiet room, he stood motionless in the doorway for a long time, running his calloused thumb over the tight, perfect stitches. For the first time in 4 years, the cold shadow left the big rancher's eyes. By February, news that the discarded seamstress was living up at the Vance Ranch reached Bitter Creek. Mrs. Gable, the hotel owner's sister and the town's self-appointed moral guardian, braved the packed snow in her cutter to visit the basin, her eyes bright with malicious curiosity. She stepped into the warm kitchen, sniffing the air filled with the scent of pine dye and fresh-baked bread, and found Nora stitching a dress for Lily by the hearth. "Nora Sterling," Mrs. Gable began, her tone dripping with artificial sorrow. "The whole town is scandalized. A widow living right here on a single man's place all winter. It is a terrible disgrace. You are throwing away what little reputation you have left, child. You ought to come into town and take a room in someone's wash house until the spring coaches roll." Before Nora could answer, Caleb stepped through the heavy timber doorway, his boots caked with snow and his broad shoulders blocking the light. His voice was quiet, but it carried the cold weight of an avalanche. "Mrs. Gable," Caleb said, "I found this woman and her child freezing on a public road when not one righteous soul in your town thought to check if they had a roof. She earns her wage by the labor of her own hands, and her child sleeps warm behind a locked door. A town that lets a child freeze to protect its appearances isn't a town whose opinion I value. Nora stays by this fire as long as she pleases, and you may drive your cutter right back down my road." Mrs. Gable turned red, pulled her fur collar tight, and hurried out to her sleigh. When the spring thaw finally broke the mountain pass in April, Caleb loaded a wagon with his cattle hides and several of Nora's intricate quilts, bringing her and little Lily down to the township fair to sell her work. The quilts were an instant sensation. Merchants from 2 counties away bid against one another for her blankets, filling Nora's leather purse with real silver dollars. In the middle of the crowded square, the hotel manager, who had evicted her, saw Nora well-dressed, prosperous, carrying her happy child, and standing beside the most respected rancher in the basin. Driven by spite and bitter jealousy, the man pushed through the crowd and shouted for all to hear, pointing an accusatory finger at little Lily. "Look at the pious seamstress," the manager sneered, his voice ringing over the hushed square. "Whose child is that anyway? Living up on a lonely ranch all winter with a man who isn't her kin." The crowd went dead silent, waiting for the shame to break her. But Nora did not flinch, nor did she step behind Caleb. She held her head high, her voice ringing clear as a bell across the square. "This child is Thomas Sterling's daughter," Nora said, "raised by the labor of my own hands without a single cent of your charity. I paid for every crust of bread she ate with honest work, while you took a widow's last $3 and threw a 4-year-old child out into a blizzard." Before the manager could utter another spiteful word, Caleb Vance stepped forward. He placed his big, calloused hand gently on little Lily's shoulder, then reached out and took Nora's hand in his own, facing the entire town. His plain-spoken voice echoed with quiet, unshakable authority. "Whose child is that?" Caleb repeated, looking the manager straight in the eye. "She's mine, if her mother will have me, and I'd advise any man in this county to think twice before he speaks ill of my family again." The crowd erupted into murmurs of deep approval, turning their backs on the humiliated manager, who slunk away into the alleys with his reputation ruined forever. By May, Nora had her own bank account, a reputation as the finest quilter in the territory, and more orders than she could fill in a year. She had earned enough to buy her own small cottage in town if she chose. She was entirely free, beholden to no man. On a warm evening, when the mountain laurel was blooming white across the basin, Caleb walked out to the porch, where Nora was watching little Lily play in the grass. He stood beside her, looking out over the greening valley. "Nora," Caleb said softly, his plain-spoken voice steady and deep. "I waited until the roads were open and your purse was full to say this, because I wanted you to have your freedom first. You have your own money now, your own good name, and the means to go anywhere you like. You don't need my house, and you don't need my shelter." He reached out and gently took her work-worn hand in his own. "So I'm asking you now, not out of rescue, but because I love you. I don't want a housekeeper, Nora. I want a partner for my life, and a daughter to share my name. Marry me, stay for good, not because you've nowhere to go, but because this home was dark and cold until you brought your heart into it, and I want to stand beside you for all the days we have left." Nora looked into the honest, steady eyes of the man who had stopped his wagon on a frozen road to save her child, and felt a deep, lasting warmth flood her soul. "I chose this home the night you gave me the key, Caleb," she answered softly. "We're staying because we love you." They were married that June under the high pines, with the whole valley attending to wish them well. Caleb officially adopted little Lily, giving her his name and his heart. Together, Caleb and Nora built a long, rich life in the basin. They expanded the ranch, raised Lily alongside 3 more strong children, and built a workshop where Nora taught young, castaway women the art of quilting, giving them a trade and their own independence. Framed above the stone hearth in their parlor hung a small square of calico from that very first Star of the Prairie quilt Nora had sewn during that snowbound winter. It remained throughout their long lives a quiet symbol that the bitterest storms can lead to the warmest hearths, and that a life cast away by the world can find a permanent, beautiful home when held in honest hands. If this one warmed you tonight, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I hope it found you well. I'll see you in the next one.